What is going on, everybody? We are back for another off-season edition of the Double Switch podcast. Usually, we would get to this podcast, this off-season wish list, a little earlier because our off-seasons have started usually in October. But here we are in November. It's November 12th, and we're just now getting to it. Free agency is underway. All the opt-outs, they've happened. We know exactly who's out there now. A couple signings early in the offseason, but for the most part, all the free agents are out there. And it's a good opportunity for this Phillies team to get better. It's a good opportunity for this Phillies team to fill some holes that we now have. The offseason's fun, man. I always enjoy the offseason, but how are you doing today?
I'm great, and finally, I guess I'd say I'm done dwelling on the Phillies' end to the season. And based on the information I'm bringing to you guys today, I'm ready to make this team better for next year. And I think we got a couple of ideas, and it kind of helps that this offseason, the shortstop market and the starting pitching market are very deep, and those are the two positions the Phillies need to improve on.
Yeah, those two are pretty deep. The reliever market, not so much, especially now with probably, the two top right-handed arms off the market, Suarez and Montero. We had to do some adjusting. Well, I did because they were on my wish list. So we have some new names. But basically how this is going to work is this episode is Johnny's episode. I'm going to take a back seat. He has his idea of how this Phillies team can improve. And he has to sway me that this is the best route for this team to follow. So without, any further introduction, Johnny, what's the plan? What's the plan?
All right, Josh. So I think as many of us know, the Phillies are going into the offseason with an estimated $177 million payroll for 2023. That's after all the arbitration estimations and all that. So that leaves us with about, I think it's 50 or 60 million until the luxury tax, which is 233 this year. So I got to spend about 60, 70 million. And my first signing is the big one that everyone's been wearing out already. It's Trea Turner. I think Trea Turner signs with the Phillies, 7 years, $245 million with a $35 million AAV. And I think we do the obvious here. It seems like the guy wants to be here. Philly wants him here.
Okay. Not a surprise. Gonna be honest, no. I'm not surprised with that one. So out of the four shortstops, is he your favorite? I mean, put everything aside. Just try to be as unbiased as possible. Is he your favorite?
No, but I think his skill set fits this team the best. I think this.
Go ahead.
I think this team's been. We could see it when in the World Series when we watched our 1 through 6 hitters combined for about 1 million strikeouts. We need guys who can put the bat on the ball at a really high rate and take walks. Like I love my walks. Take walks, less strikeouts. Trea Turner fits the bill. The rest of them are very good players, but a lot of them, like Dansby has a lot of swing and miss in his game. So does Carlos Correa. I do like Dansby Swanson as a backup if we're not able to get Trea Turner.
Okay, so this is a tricky one for me. My heart really wants Trea Turner. I can just imagine him 2-spot right in front of Bryce Harper, just wreaking havoc all over the bases. The shortstop fits perfect. He's a good defender, but I do think that there's some problems with Trea Turner that I think people are choosing to ignore here. Basically, he's a 30-year-old player with an excellent hit tool, batted right around 300 this year. But the thing about his profile is it relies so much on speed. We're probably going to have to give him 7 years. Did you know that 15% of his hits, this is an average, 15% of his hits are infield singles?
Wow.
Yeah, really, so if you're talking 100 or 200 hits, you're talking 30 of those hits are infield singles. And as you get older, we all know that speed does not age super well. So when he's 35, those infield singles are going to be outs. it's kind of like picking, it's nitpicking here because there's questions with every long term deal. There were questions with Bryce Harper. How's the back going to age? It's a very aggressive swing. So I hear those complaints. I still want him no matter what. The profile at shortstop, it's a weak arm. I think we might be looking at a future second baseman as he gets older and loses some of that mobility. But if you're trying to put the best product on the field, kind of including everything that you need in a player, the culture fit, the lineup fit, the fielding fit. He's the best option for this team, and I think that it's if it's very likely that he's a Philadelphia Philly. I mean, I just think there's too much steam on this right now. He wants to be here. We want a shortstop. The stars are just aligning for Trea Turner, and I'm all in. I'm kind of all in on him, but I do know that there's going to be things that happen that play out if we do sign him to a long-term deal. I don't think he's going to be a good 37-year-old player, but you're signing him for these next 3 or 4 years when you're going for it.
That's it. That's exactly it. When you're in a situation like we are, and we really need this added star player that brings this skill set for the next 4 to 5 years, you're kind of willing to deal with the consequences of the final 2 years of the contract if he exceeds expectations the first 4 years. But even these days, you could even throw an opt-out in the contract after 5 seasons.
That's true. Usually the opt-out's for the player, and if he gets to 35 years old and he can't beat out infield singles anymore, I don't picture him opting out. But you're right about
Fair
that.
enough.
And you touched on the other shortstops. So I like Dansby as a player. I think he's a very underrated player. But that profile, man, if you stick that in a lineup with Rhys Hoskins and Nick Castellanos, man, dude, like it's just a mess if they bring in a nasty right-handed reliever because all the holes that Rhys Hoskins has in his profile, Dansby has the same holes. He is a much better defender than the other two, so he's probably the best. I don't know. Cray is pretty good, but he might be the best defender on the market right now. He's that good at shortstop.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Dansby has a notch over Carlos Correa right now as a defender. But
Yeah, and he's a pretty good leader. So I like the player. I don't know if I like the player for us, but I do like the player in general. Correa is an interesting fit too. I don't know how much of a culture fit he would have here because we have our vocal leaders. It kind of feels like a situation where we'd be blending too many personalities together, and he's going to get like 300 million, which is just that's a ton considering he's 28. So I don't know about the Correa. I think I'm probably out on the Correa and the Xander one. I'll touch on that in my episode, so we can kind of conclude the shortstop market there.
all right, absolutely, yeah. And end of the day, Trea Turner, great player. He's familiar with Bryce Harper, which we all know is a big thing in John Middleton's and Dave Dombrowski's decision making. And he's also played with Schwarber, and it would give us the dream. We'd have a stellar defensive center fielder, shortstop, second baseman, and catcher, all up the middle. That's what I'm looking for in this team. But I'll move on to number 2 because that was an obvious one. Everyone and their brother wants Trea Turner. But number 2, I have the Phillies going out and signing Taylor Rogers, the left-handed reliever for the Brewers, formerly with the Padres, traded over midseason to a 2-year, $24 million deal. That's about 12 AAV, and I think that's probably the top offer he's going to be getting this year. He had a very good start to the season with the Padres, and then he kind of got roughed up a little bit with the home runs in Milwaukee. But Milwaukee also had basically everyone struggling towards the end of the season. Might have played into it a little bit. But I think for me, this is replacing Brad Hand. We have Jose Alvarado, but I like to have 2 steady lefties in that bullpen. I think Taylor Rogers is that. And I think it'd be a great for Rob Thompson to throw around wherever he wants in that bullpen.
I like this too. I like Rogers as a pitcher. He's much better than those stats show. He's a good pitcher, and I like his ability to close out games if need be. I think the game's evolving to a point where the typical closer that closes out every game I don't think we're going to see that as much going forward. I think it's going to be mixing and matching, kind of like we did in the playoffs. And I love it. I like throwing out the best advantage you can out there. Sir Anthony is like probably always going to be the best pitcher in the bullpen. But if you have three lefties coming up, you want to have options there. I do think that he's going to be in demand because people know he's good. These front offices aren't going to just look at the stats and say, that guy stinks. It's not going to happen. But no, I think it's a good opportunity to. The thing about free agency is you can't just always go after the guy who just put up an awesome season. And if you do that strategy, you're just always going to pay top dollar for guys coming off of career years. You kind of have to be objective and look at the complete profile. And it's a guy who is a direct upgrade over Brad Hand, better swing and miss stuff. And he makes a ton of sense. I'd be all in on this too.
Yeah, a big number that popped out at me was 30% strikeout rate last year. That's elite. I think Brad Hand was like low 20s, maybe in the teens, which just doesn't really cut it for a left-handed reliever in 2022.
Yeah, and Brad Hand walks too many people.
Exactly. Yeah, not great control. I probably won't miss Brad Hand on the Phillies. All right. Well, that was a little reinforcement for the bullpen. Number 3, I'm going with the rotation addition. I think this is going to be our new number 4 starter. Phillies sign Jose Quintana to a 2-year, $26 million deal. That would be 13 AAV, and that would put the Phillies at $230 million spent. Quintana, we saw firsthand what he could do in the playoffs. He's honestly has a little bit of ranger in him. The way they keep batters off balance with their sinkers, changeup, curveball. Really good pitcher. He's been doing it for a while. We've seen him with the Cubs, the White Sox, with the Pirates, with the Cardinals. Yeah, and he's a guy that knows how to pitch. He's a veteran. You can trust him to eat innings.
How many years?
Just 2.
All right. So this is one of those ideas where it's not my top plan. It wouldn't be my first option. I actually have a bunch of options here. He's not even on it. That's not to say that he doesn't make sense. He's a good pitcher, and I would definitely convince myself that it's a good idea if we sign him. I could probably convince myself of anybody. That's just how I work. But I think that he has a couple things working against him. I know he's a big pitch to contact ground ball pitcher. Depending on how we line up this defense in the next year, I mean, we've seen pitchers have issues with their their FIP to ERA. Aaron Nola specifically last year, when you put them in front of this Phillies defense with a lot of questionable fielders, Rhys, Castellanos, Schwarber. That Cardinals defense, as we remember, was the best in baseball. So I'm sure that played to his advantage as a pitcher. So if he had, I don't even know, like a 2.8 ERA with the Cardinals, you can probably expect that to be, I don't even know, like a half run higher here. He did have a lot of issues there for a couple of years. He seemed to have kind of lost his ability to pitch, and he kind of refound himself as this contact pitcher. I don't think the strikeout numbers are good. I prefer someone with some strikeout upside. They don't have to be, like I don't have anybody off the top of my head. They don't have to be like Rodon, where they average 12 per 9. But I like someone who has that in their game. And specifically, I mean, what I'm looking for in this 4 starter, if I were to go this way, is someone who has the upside. Quintana, he has the ability, but you're not going to, I'd be utterly surprised next year if Quintana popped off and was, our game 2 starter in a series. I think he is what he is at this point. 2 years, I think he'll be able to get more, actually. I think he might get 3 years on the market. He's going to be an interesting player to watch in free agency, and I could convince myself of this. I could definitely get behind this if I really wanted to.
I do get your criticism. Quintana, he isn't the sexy pitcher here. He's not Carlos Rodon. I get that. But he's a low-risk pitcher on a team with a lot of high-risk contracts. What I mean by that is if we were to go out and sign one of the flame-throwing type guys like an Eovaldi or something like that, a lot of injury concerns for a guy you're giving that much money to. And the reason you sign pitchers is so they can go out every 5 days and pitch for you. And I think Quintana could give us close to 200 innings, and I think he could slot into a game 4 or game 3 in the playoffs.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how to rate this. Like, yeah. Okay. I'm kind of convinced. I can get behind that. I guess it's also something to think about. It's not something you really worry about, but the Braves, who we play a ton, crush lefties. That's not what you'd love to see, but you don't build a rotation around that. It's just something that popped the top to the top of my head there. The
Fair
matchups,
enough.
but yeah,
All right.
no, it's cool.
My number 4 move to get us back to the World Series is a trade. I have the Phillies trading Rhys Hoskins, Griff McGarry, and Nick Maton, and receiving Yandy Diaz and Ryan Yarbrough. All right, let me explain the number. I'll go into the financials real quick. Hoskins probably going to make about 13, McGarry about 500K, Maton about 700, and then Yandy Diaz and Yarbrough combined for about $11 million. The money would essentially offset, and my plan is to send Yandy Diaz back to playing first base. He has played at third base a little bit between 2021 and 2022, but when you go in and look at his outs above average, at third base he is -8 and at first base he is +4 outs above average. So Yandy Diaz has been pushed away from his natural position and is actually a pretty stellar first baseman. And I think his offensive numbers kind of speak for themselves. I don't know if you know a lot about Yandy Diaz. Very good player, and he has a 10% strikeout percentage and a 14% walk percentage. He walks more than he strikes out. Frankly, that's what this team needs in that lineup instead of Rhys Hoskins. And this is no knock on Rhys Hoskins. He's provided a lot of value for us, but this provides our lineup the balance offensively that we need while upgrading at first base.
Yeah. So just off the bat here, yeah, I know Yandy Diaz hits the ball really hard. He always has. He's kind of plagued with the Alec Bohm kind of disease where he just crushes the ball into the ground. They're actually kind of similar players, if I'm being honest.
They are.
But no, I like Yandy Diaz. I think the money here would be a problem because I know the Rays are always trying to cut costs, and I can't imagine Yandy Diaz is making more than $5-6 million. Griff McGarry, go ahead.
Yeah, Yandy Diaz and Yarbrough are probably estimated to make about $12 million next year together.
Okay, and I know Rhys is at 16, and the Rays pinch pennies down there, so you'd have to probably send some money back. But Griff McGarry would definitely close that gap. Man, dude, can you just imagine what the Rays could turn Griff McGarry into?
Well, imagine what they could. I would like to give them a shot with Nick Maton and Rhys Hoskins too.
Yeah, we'll look up in a couple of years, and they'll have Tyler Glass now and Brandon Lau. It just brand new players. But no, I hear what you're saying. The swing and miss in this lineup, it reared its ugly head again in the playoffs, and a player like that, I think, fits very well into the profile of this team. We see Alec Bohm just balance out this lineup by himself sometimes. When everybody's striking out, you have Alec Bohm poking singles to right field, and I love it. That's why I'm all in on Alec Bohm as a stabilizing figure in this lineup. And Yandy Diaz would do the same thing. I mean, I think this would also kind of even out the lineup, if that's like a way of saying it. Like it feels like sometimes you have the high strikeout, home run pop at the top of the lineup. You have the two good hitters, JT and Harp, in the middle. Then you have like contact hitters towards the bottom. It feels weird sometimes, and I think evening that out would limit the volatility of this lineup. I'd definitely be down for that. Would Yarborough be a long man or a starter? You might have said that.
That's up for the Phillies to decide. He's a guy you could probably use either way. I think we'd probably use him as an opener in like the 5 spot. I think that probably would be the role for him. But the one big takeaway from this move is just it's an improved defense at first base. I
For
mean,
sure.
I don't. Do you follow the outs above average?
Yes, Statcast, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean between combined 2021 and 2022 for both players at the first base position, Diaz is +4 and Hoskins is -10.
Dude, I can't believe Rhys is that bad at first base.
I know.
It can't be that hard. Like
I,
half the time you just have to catch the ball, and he doesn't do that enough to. Oh my god! But no, I hear you. If you put a better first baseman over there, he'll pick more balls. He'll have better range, and you'd see it. You'd see it in the numbers, and you'd probably see it in the game.
yeah, yeah. So that's my number 4, and it would probably have. If I did the math, it would have the Rays taking on $4 million. We could probably eat that 4 million or 5. We have money to spend. I'm sure we could always eat into it. But that puts us at about $227 million.
Check
And
like it.
I got my final move. It's not going to make anyone go crazy, but we're going to go over the tax and we're going to sign Ross Stripling to a 2-year, $16 million deal. We're locking in a number 5 starter or a long man. Depends if that Yarborough trade happens the way I want it to. But if it doesn't, I think Ross Stripling is a great option. He's grown used to being a swingman between the bullpen and rotation, basically everywhere he's pitched. He's not going to strike out everyone. His fastball is around 92 miles per hour, but he's a pitcher that the NL East has not seen a lot of. And I think that pays dividends because a lot of these pitchers kind of just get floated around the National League and the National League East. It's a new arm. It's a fresh arm. It's a different look. And it gives us depth with injuries.
Are you okay with Ross Stripling starting a playoff game?
That's like an opener, maybe, probably not.
Okay, so yeah, I'm thinking through all your moves, and I guess we have Quintana now. We have Stripling. I guess you're pushing Bailey to the bullpen. I guess Yarborough is getting pushed to the bullpen. A lot of starters here, kind of creating a glut. And if you plan on having Andy Painter contribute, I mean, what's the plan there?
Well, I don't think you can plan for Andy Painter to eat 200 innings in a season. I mean, he's never pitched above 125 innings in a season.
Yeah, pretty much.
If Andy Painter is coming up next year, it's not going to be opening day. They'll probably limit his innings in Double and Triple A, and then have him come up around August and probably be like an opener for the Phillies. I would never expect Andy Painter to come up here and be pitching 6+ innings. I think it'll be 3 to 5 innings every outing he has when he comes up.
Okay. I like Stripling. I always have. He went through his time period with the Dodgers and never really got a real opportunity. He was one of those pitchers I was always waiting for him to just go somewhere else and just get the opportunity, like Kenta Maeda, like some of the Dodgers pitchers do.
Yeah.
And he dealt with the AL East last season, so he can probably deal with anybody at this point. I actually like him probably a little more than Quintana. I think that he's going to translate better to a new division. I think, like you said, nobody's really seen Ross Stripling in this division, and I think he's a player with that ability to actually kind of get a little better. His career hasn't really followed a normal trajectory. He he only recently kind of got an opportunity to start, so I think this would be a
Yeah.
signing where we sign somebody with the intention of making him better. And I love those deals. Yeah, I don't know how this works with the Quintana. Like I said, you're getting a lot of arms in there, and I mean, they're looking at Bailey Falter now, and I think, but you got to give Bailey Falter that 5 spot, especially if you're intent on signing a big name shortstop, that cheap asset that Bailey Falter is now. Um, he pitched well last season. I think he at least deserves that opportunity. So I think if you probably just can cross off one of your pitchers and save some money there, maybe just look at lower end depth moves, either in the bullpen. I know utility man would probably be a thing if we trade Maton. Um, Maybe a lefty bat off the bench, something like that. I think that's probably where I would go with your last concluding pick. But I mean, other than that, though, you're looking at a team that improves from Kyle Gibson to Quintana, which is a clear upgrade, um, or Stripling, and then you have Yandy Diaz replacing Rhys at first base, which is a kind of apparent, like it's a equivalent move in terms of you lose a little pop, but you gain a little defense, and then obviously you have the shortstop. So team's definitely better. Fills a lot of holes, and it feels like a deeper team, which I think is always useful, especially in the playoffs where these series kind of drag on. We saw the team run out of gas. Depth was tested. It would give us a very good chance to get to the playoffs and make a big statement next year with a good bounce back year from that World Series run. I'm all in on just about all of that.
Awesome. Yeah, and that would only leave us about 2 million over the luxury tax, which seems like we're willing to go over these days. And yeah, I think all these moves are just me learning from what we saw in the World Series. If you want to be a team like that, you have to be deep everywhere. And I know it sounded like a lot of arms, but I think it's good to have some high level competition in the starting rotation. I think you can never have too many pitchers, and the Astros proved that to us.
No, you're definitely right. No, it'd be interesting, and I definitely see some of your signings more so than mine being likely, like your bullpen arm. I think that's very likely. I think two of the pitchers you named. I mean, I could definitely see either of them. Feels like a Dombrowski signing to a certain extent, but no, it'll be interesting. I like it. I like all this stuff.
Yeah, well, that's all I got for you. So I'm glad you liked it.
Cool. No, that's good because I don't have any of your stuff. We have no overlap in what we're doing.
Ooh,
So next episode's going to be good. That was Johnny's off season. We will be right back on to talk about my off season. And thank you guys for listening to this episode.
go Phils.